Hey guys, I just wanted to jump on here to make some very simple and quick tutorials on random items that you may want to add to your room, just to help you see the type of modeling that I would like to see for this project, as well to just give you some ideas on tools and techniques to use. So let's get started. I was thinking about making the first one be just like a very simple cup. So in order to do that, I would take out a cylinder, and let me just get out of my redshift here. So I'm gonna go up here to my render settings and then change from redshift to standard, just so that when I do my render preview, I don't have to be dealing with redshift. All right, so we have the cylinder. I'm gonna show the lines of the shading so I can see what's going on here. And because I'm making a cup, I'm gonna want the top part to be bigger than the bottom part. So to make that easier for me, I'm gonna reduce my height segments to 1 so that this is just one big polygon. Let's maybe reduce the size of this a little bit, so I can click here on this little dot, or go here in the height. So 145 looks about right. Now I'm gonna make this editable. Press C on my keyboard. And now I want to select all these polygons that make up the top. So I'm doing my brush selection, selecting all these guys, and then I am just scaling them up, but only in the width and the depth. I don't want it to be bigger in the height. So I'm going to use this little axis band here. It highlights the two that are going to be scaled up. So I'm just going to click and drag until the top part is a little bit bigger than the bottom part. And you see the reason that I deleted those segments is that if I had those segments, I'm just gonna snap back, make a cut here, so you can see what would happen if I had more segments. When I made this bigger, this would only be affecting the segments on the top, right? So if we had 4, you'd see how we would have had to do that. Then we would have had to come in here and then do the same thing here, blah, blah, blah. So by not having segments, we make our life a little bit easier. So again, just selecting this, making this bigger. And I'm just eyeballing this here. All right, once this is here, I want the general shape of the cup. So I know I want to select everything here, do an inset. So press I on my keyboard so that this cup can have some thickness. Click and drag to the left. About that looks good. And then I want to extrude this downward. So I'm going to press D on my keyboard or go to extrude here and click and drag to the left. Now, as you can see, because I am extruding and the shape on the top is bigger than the one on the bottom, I'm crossing the cup itself. So I'm just going to change views, maybe here in the front view, so that I can see where the shape is. And now I just need to scale that down. So I'm going to scale that down again using the axis band that highlights the Z and the X. So I'm scaling that down until it fits inside of the cup, around there. So I should be able to look in the cup and not have anything come out here. Good. General shape is good. So now I can put this in a subdivision surface. So cylinder shall have a subdivision surface. And as you can see, that smooths it out way too much. So we need to do a few things to fix this. So let's add a few cuts. We're going to add using KL, which is going to be our loop cut. We're going to add a cut here near the bottom so that it sharpens this edge. And then one on the complete bottom, because we really want to sharpen that edge that makes the end of the cup. And then we're going to do the same thing up here, a cut near the top, and then a cut on the inside. So we're just sharpening those edges. So if you see it without the subdivision surface, look at where that cut was, and it's just sharpening the edges of this cup so that it looks like this. One more thing, this is probably good. One last thing I would do is, you see on the inside it's still very rounded. Here I can make just one more cut and sharpen that, but I think a better way to do that would be to just select all these polygons on the bottom. And then I'm just gonna activate my subdivision surface again, and I'm just gonna toggle between them so you can see what I'm doing. I will do an inset here, right? So click and drag to the left to do a little inset. And really what that inset did is that it added that cut, right? The same cut that I would have added manually, but I just did it with the shape of these polygons. And as you can see, I'm just gonna snap back. It sharpens that edge, right? So I'm just adding an inset and you can see how it's sharpening that. And that looks fine. We can add another cut if we want. Let me just go here. We can add one here as well so that this is even sharper. Good. Good. So this is a cup. Obviously very simple, but a cup. All right, so let's call that cup and hide that. So that's gonna be our first one. The second one that I thought about was a television screen. So the cup would be for like if you're doing a kitchen scene or if you're doing a living room scene, there's gonna be a cup there. The second one could be a scene where you have a television or a computer screen. So let's make that using a cube. So take up my cube, make it thinner in Z, right? So probably a little bit more. I did 8 centimeters in Z and make that smaller in Y. Around there so that it looks sort of like a TV. Maybe make this a little bit thinner. All right, so once we have that, I'm going to immediately just make that editable. So press C on my keyboard. And now I will select the polygon that's on the front. Let me just frame default so I can see this guy is on the front. And I will do an inset. So I on my keyboard, click and drag to the left. Inset so that I have the edge that surrounds monitors or TVs. And then D, click and drag to the left so that we have what would be the screen. So then this would be the idea, right? To make this a little bit more exciting, I would like to add a stand to the TV. So I'm going to do my loop cut. So KL. And I want to add a cut so that I can just extrude the stand from here. So I'm going to use symmetrical cut here in the properties so that I make 2 cuts and they're exactly the same width apart. And I will add them right here. And that way I have this new polygon that I can select. This guy down here. I'm going to do an inset so that it's thinner. Then I'm going to do an extrude downwards. And then I'm going to do another little extrude because the second extrude, I'm going to select it, right? This new geometry I just made. I will do UL for my loop selection. Select that and then extrude that outwards so that I have the stand of the TV. So I'll repeat again. That was just an inset, an extrude downwards, another extrude downwards, and then an extrude outwards so that I have the stand. So this is the general idea. Obviously, I would want to then bevel these edges. So I will select here in my edge mode, UL for my loop selection, select edges that should be beveled. So this guy should be beveled, this guy here should be beveled, this guy should be beveled. I will now go to 9 to my brush selection and hold in shift. I'm adding to my selection. All right. So here I want to select this edge, but I don't want these edges, these flat ones. I don't want them. That edge, I would want these edges. And because I'm doing these edges that are like on the side, I also would want to bevel this guy right here so that I don't get any end guns when I bevel these edges. So I will select that guy. I don't need this guy. I would select this bottom guy as well. I would select this whole thing and this whole thing. So I'm toggling between selecting with the loop selection and selecting with the brush selection. And then toggling with my shift to add and then control to remove. Getting a quick look around to make sure everything's okay. All right, great. So now I will go to my bevel tool. You can go right here, write MS on your keyboard, click and drag towards the right a little bit. And you can see the offset immediately happens, but we don't have any subdivisions, which is why it's not smooth. So I'd want to add a few subdivisions. I think 3 would be more than good. And just leave that and take a look, make sure that everything is okay. So this is why you can see why I selected this bevel down here, because it gave us now quads for all of these. Otherwise, this edge would have given us n-gons. Great, so that looks about right. So that's your screen right there. So I'm gonna name that TV and hide that as well. All right, what's something else that we can make? Make a pillow. So maybe you're making a bed. So for the pillow, I would take my cube. I would make that smaller in Y and smaller in Z so that it gives me the general shape of the pillow. Maybe a little bit smaller here and a little bit smaller in X. Let's say that's the general shape of the pillow. I would immediately make this editable and then make it a child of my subdivision surface because it is a pillow, so I want it to be soft. So I know immediately I want it to be rounded as much as possible. Not this rounded, but rounded. So then now we're going to take advantage of the cuts that we know how to do. And I'm going to do KL. And our symmetrical cut is already on, which is great. So I'm going to add a cut here to sharpen these edges. And then let's take off symmetrical cut and let's just add one cut here around the middle. So I'll do 50% in the offset. So just right in the middle of this pillow. So then we can select these edges here, left and right, and maybe scale these down so that the pillow kind of goes down in that way. And we can select these and play around with their positioning. So if we scale it inwards, then they're gonna kind of get close to each other. If we scale it outwards, then they'll get further apart. So we can scale it until it looks relatively like a pillow. And that looks fine. I could maybe increase the subdivision renderer here so that when we do go out to render it here, it just looks smoother than here in our viewport. Because here in our viewport, you see that we will get like jagged edges, whereas if we increase it to 3, only in the renderer, so we're not having to deal with that as we're modeling, then we're good. So this would be a pillow. Relatively simple. All right, what else can we make? All right, so I just thought of a silly one that we can make, but let's say you're making a bathroom scene. Use a cylinder, and we're going to make a toilet paper. So with our cylinder, let's make this smaller in the height. Also notice that this is all I'm just eyeballing all of this until it looks about right. But you probably want to make sure that things are proportionate in your room. You don't want a toilet paper to be bigger than a bed, right? So you can model them in whatever size you want, but at the end, you'll have to maybe scale them down or scale them up. Just be aware of that. So we did that. We're going to leave everything else as is because we're going to use a subdivision later, so we don't need to add segments. Good to go. So I'm going to press C on my keyboard. All right, so now that I made it editable, I want to delete the entire bottom part. So I can select it here. I can select it in here with my loop selection. I'm going to go with my rectangle selection and select just the bottom polygons. Delete them all. And then I will use a symmetry object as a parent to my cylinder, and I want it to be symmetrical. Right now it's showing me it's going to be symmetrical in X. I don't want that, so I'm going to turn that off. I want it to be symmetrical up and down, so in Y. And the reason that I'm doing this is so that when I make a hole here in the center, it will weld them together. So I'm going to take off show planes. I don't want to see that that plane for Y. And now that we're here, let's select these polygons here and let's make the hole. So press I on your keyboard for an inset, go in, and then go down with your extrude. So press D on your keyboard for extrude and then go down. And I will go down, as you can see here, this is why I wanted the symmetry, because the bottom connects to the top. I will go down until they connect as close as possible. It's gonna go down right here. And then once that's done, I'm gonna press delete so that I delete that set of polygons that is in the center. And then I will make sure that my symmetry has the weld option on so that those points weld together. And then let's go in here and check that this weld option is working. 0.1 centimeters was too far away from me. So this is how you know that it's not working, because I saw both edges. So I just increased the tolerance and then it worked and it welded it together. And that's great. Now what we want is to make that a child of a symmetry object. And you can see here, the weld worked beautifully. And obviously this is a little bit too rounded. So we're gonna need to do quite a few things in here. It's mostly just adding cuts so that we can round out these edges. Good thing we only have to deal with the top of this, so we don't have to be making cuts here and then also on the bottom. So KL to add a cut. So I want to tighten this edge here because I want to tighten the edge that makes up the hole. So I would make a cut right here and then make one right here so that we get a pretty, and I could maybe move this down. So I'll select this edge, UL to loop select. And just take a look at how that looks. Yeah, I moved it down just a little bit so that this wouldn't be as tight. So, general idea, right, of a toilet paper. But now let's add something a little bit more exciting to it. Let's make it look like there is a piece of the toilet paper coming off. So I would go to my polygon mode and select, let's just use these random polygons. So notice these are the guys that I'm selecting, these three that are on the side. And then I will do D for my extrude, and I would extrude outwards. And then now it's about manipulating this portion here, right? So I'm extruding outwards. Now I will definitely scale this down and then move it probably here to the left. Rotate it as well. This way, and then scale this down like this. Move it a little bit more. I want to make sure that I'm not crossing anything here on this side. Let's move it around there. Let's rotate it a little bit more. And now let's do another extrude. So D and extrude it outwards. All right, and now we just add a few cuts to sharpen this. So we're here and we want to add a cut near the start of that so that it sharpens that edge. And then we want to add another one here near the end of that so that it sharpens. Oh, no, that actually is maybe near the center of it. And now, again, this is about moving and pushing points and seeing which one works better, right? So, for example, do I want this to be a little bit thinner? Probably. This whole thing as well. A little bit thinner. How about you as well? Right, I would probably want to go in here and fix these edges. Probably move them a little bit more like this so there's not such a sharp separation there. Turn this on. Right, so general idea, you get a little toilet paper with what looks like a little piece of it being ripped off. So that would be that, toilet paper. All right, so I'll do a quick little lamp. I have a lamp in my room, so I thought might be a good idea to recreate it to show you that you're not limited to just using the polygonal modeling. Like, yes, that's definitely the main thing that you should use, but you're not limited to only using that. So I will make first the light bulb of this. It's mostly an aesthetic thing, so I will just click and drag a reference image here in my front view. And it is huge. I'm gonna do mode, view settings, back, make that much smaller and increase its transparency. I'm only using this so that I can look at the outline here, and then with my pen tool, so I'll go to my model mode, go to my pen tool right here. I can then, I'm only gonna make one side of it. So I will click once, click again, following the outline, clicking and dragging so that it is a smooth transition. Click here and drag that down a little bit. Then here around the middle. So I'm only going to up to Y, the Y axis here. And now let's just fix this a bit so that it fits better. All right, so this is the shape that we got. And now I will use a lathe to make my spline child of it, and boom, we get the light bulb. So one thing I want to make sure is that these points that I drew right here in the center are actually in the center, because if not, then I'll have either a hole or, like as you see here, or crossing geometry. So I want to make sure that these points, I'll select the point here in the center, go to my coordinate manager, make sure the X of them is at 0. So 0 here, and then here, 0 here, and there we go. Now there's no hole here on the top. Great. So that would be our light bulb. All right, so I'll just make one last thing, and it'll be like a simple, just to show you how everything that we have learned this semester really kind of comes full circle. So if you guys remember that we made a chair on our first class together, so we'll make just a very quick table here. So I will make this cube editable, go to model mode, and then flatten this out a little bit in Y so that it's not as tall, and then in Z, let's say this is the general shape of the table that I want. Then I want to go to my polygon mode, KL for my loop cut, symmetrical cut to make sure that these are happening at the same, in the same width apart. I want to get really close here to my edge, but not too close. Click and then round this out. So this would be about 10 centimeters from the edge, and I would want to do the exact same thing here on this side. So again, get close, click, make sure that this is rounded out to 10 centimeters. So that we have 10 centimeters here, 10 centimeters here. And now we have that, those little bits here. I can go, and because I made that new geometry, I can just select those new polygons here. Now that I have both of them, all 4 of them selected, I make an inset to make it smaller, D to extrude it downwards, very quick table. I can then move it downwards. Make sure that you're not extruding multiple times because that will add edges, and if you don't want them, then that's not necessary. If you extrude it and you still want something longer, you can just move it using the move tool. Alright, I'll give you guys a little bit of an alternative to beveling things that is not by hand, especially because this is a relatively simple shape, and we would be spending a lot of time just going in here and selecting all these edges and then deselecting them and things like that. So instead, we're going to use the Bevel Deformer. So go to your deformers, pick bevel, make it a child of the cube. Immediately you see what it does, but it is a little bit too much, so I will decrease the offset. Here I'm in the bevel properties, offset to about 0.2, and then I will add 3 subdivisions so that it bevels all of my edges. And there we go. For simple shapes, the Bevel Deformer is very, very handy. And there we go, we have a table. Let's name this table. Let's say you wanted to add some books, you can also do that. So I have this, I'm selecting it, making it thinner. I'm just gonna go with this like general shape of a book, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Again, we are aiming just to get familiar with the tools. We're not aiming for perfection. So for this, I would probably just grab these guys here and then do an inset. Make sure that my preserve groups is checked on and that my maximum angle is higher than 91 because I want these guys to stay together. So I would increase this until these guys stay together. Perfect. And then an extrude inwards. General idea of the book. Obviously you'd want to bevel things, and then I'm just going to take the same bevel and add it, the same Bevel Deformer, and add it to the cube just so that you guys can see that relatively simple, relatively quickly we are able to make a book. Or something that looks like a book. So I hope that these were helpful. I hope that you are able to see some of the tools that I want you to use. You don't have to add a lot of details to every single model that you make. It's okay for some of the models to just look like what you're aiming for. So for example, the book, clearly we see that it doesn't have pages anywhere, but that's totally okay because ideally it would just go on like a bookshelf or on a table. So you don't have to get very, very detailed, but things should resemble what you're aiming for. And let me know if you have any questions, and I'm happy to make more of these if you guys have any specific items that you'd want to see how they would be done.